Hey drummers, so this week's Ask a Teacher is actually part 2 of our discussion on the difference between a polyrhythm and a polymeter. So if you missed part 1, you will probably want to check that out first. Otherwise, if you are all caught up, or if you just want to jump in anyway, then welcome to the video. Take it away, Carlos.
Thanks, Tyler. So let's continue where we left off. We were talking about polyrhythms. We were talking about how everything related to a polyrhythm is happening inside of the measure. Your quarter notes, your eighth notes, and your eighth note triplets. We briefly discussed the 2/3 polyrhythm. I actually played through it. And now it's time to talk about polymeters. And I, distinctly wanted to talk about them separately because whether you learn polyrhythms first or polymeters, which you're probably going to learn one or the other more deeply first, they're going to kind of inform each other. They're similar in a certain sense, which is why this question comes up at all. They are kind of similar, but then if you think back on the metaphor that I used in the first video, it's like asking what's the difference between a car and a garage. So like they are inextricably linked to each other, but then at the same time you're like, that's a dumb question, even though they are kind of linked. So it's similar. Polyrhythms happen inside of the measure using the different kinds of notes. Polymeters have more to do with the actual measures. It doesn't matter what the rhythms are. It doesn't matter what kind of notes you're using in the measures. You could theoretically create polymeters with no notes at all and all rests. That would be kind of silly, but you could do it. But again, it has nothing to do with the notes. Okay, so let's get into our conversation here about polymeters specifically, but I wanted to give you kind of that little flavor of what's to come because they are similar in a certain sense. They are related, like a car and a garage are related. But in reality, they're two totally different things. So I'm going to start on this screen. And the reason is, again, like I said, we're talking about polymeters. And so let's actually do this from now on. I'll try to remember this as well, but we're not going to use the word polymeter. We're going to use the word polymeasure. And the reason is because the word meter might confuse people, whereas you should probably know what a measure is if we're talking about this, and people are more likely to know what a measure is. So the term meter is like a little bit more broad and has a deeper meaning in music theory. We're just going to talk about this using the word measure. Okay, so polymeasure, more than one measure. Now, everything you learned from the first video and everything you know about polyrhythms is now going to help you out to understand at least the basis of what is a polymeasure. Okay, and I like that better, polymeasure. We're talking about more than one measure here. So let's say I've got a measure of 4/4, and I am going to put the time signature in here so you see it. And I'm just going to put 4 snare notes on there on this measure of 4/4. Okay, now if I just played straight quarter notes like this in a measure of 4/4, it would just be a single measure, right? Now, if I were to play a measure of 3/4 after it, this would not be a polymeter because I'm not playing them at the same time. Remember, polyrhythms were 2 or more rhythms played at the same time, not played one after the other. That's called music, going from one note to another. Most drum fills that you guys are playing are using more than one rhythm, and if not, then come to me for your first free drum lesson, because we got to talk about kind of making your fills a little bit less boring and just doing like straight 16th notes across the kit. Let's throw some triplets in there and stuff. Certainly one measure of 4/4 followed by a measure of 3/4 is not a polymeter or a polymeasure because you're not playing them at the same time. You're playing one after the other. A polymeasure is when you are playing 2 separate time signatures at the same time. Okay, so we are going to imagine using these 2 measures, for example, and we're going to play them simultaneously at the same time. And something very interesting is going to happen. Let's take it to another screen here. So let's imagine you are counting this measure of 4/4, and you're just counting quarter notes, quarter notes, quarter notes over and over and over. Okay, like that. And then I come in, and I want to join you, but I'm going to play at the same time, starting on the 1 with you when you start right at the beginning, starting on the 1 alongside you. I'm going to start playing on my snare, but in groups of 3s. And that looks like this. So, look what happens here. Even though we're both starting together on the 1, okay, we're going to hit together on the 2, we're going to hit together on the 3. Right here, even though you're still in your measure, you haven't finished your first measure, you're hitting that 4th quarter note, I've restarted a new measure because my measure is smaller than yours, okay? My measure is 3/4, so that's 1 quarter note less. So even though you're still playing your measure, I've started again. Now look what happens here where I start again on my 1. You're on the 3. So we're still not linked back up together again. We're still not back together on the 1. Here's my 1 again. Now it's a 2. Now I'm linked up with your 2 and your measure, still not together. And then finally, here we are back together again. Okay, on the 1, and then we kind of restart together. And then look, and I added this one here because just to show you that it is starting again, just like this. You're on your 4, and I'm on my 1. So a polymeter or a polymeasure is 2 different measures being played simultaneously. Again, think about what you learned in the polyrhythm video. You didn't watch the polyrhythm video, did you? Unbelievable. This is the first time I've ever done this in a YouTube video. Click on the thing. Perfect. Watch it, pops up on this side. If you haven't watched that, watch that. But again, these 2 things are happening simultaneously. With polyrhythms, it's rhythms inside the measure happening at the same time. In polymeters, it's the actual measures that you're talking about. So, I know you're looking at this, and this is good because this is making it very obvious that when you play 2 measures of different time signatures at the same time, that you're going to get this weird thing where you're not lining up on the 1 every time. Whereas if the guitar player is playing in 4/4 and the drummer's playing in 4/4 and the singer's singing in 4/4, everybody's going to continue to link back up on the 1, which musically is what we're the most used to. Whether it's a time signature of 5/4 or 7/8, or you're listening to a Tool song and it's got like a little measure of 3/16 in there or whatever, either way, everybody's linking back in on the 1 because all the different instruments are kind of playing in unison. Polymeters or polymeasures are an example of when people are not lining back up on the 1. So at the end of the video, I will give you a list of songs. I'll put it right there. Of songs that do this, because there's obviously a lot of really great music out there that does this. If you want to go listen to those songs and go, oh, okay, cool, here's an example of that. This is all like, music nerds nerding out on music theory and trying to understand a little bit more about the terminology that we hear getting kicked around like polymeter. So when that happens, remember, it's just polymeasure, more than 1 measure simultaneously. So as promised, we are going to talk about a couple examples of songs that use polymeters. I only have a few here for you, but then we're going to actually take one of those and we're going to really make it very clear using this song as an example. So here's a couple examples. Cashmere by Led Zeppelin is a great one. You really, really hear the stark contrast in that one. 5/4 by the Gorillaz is actually the one we're going to talk about. Let Down is a Radiohead song that's got some good polyrhythms in there. And then Fever Inoculum by Tool. But if literally everything, almost every song by Tool has got something like this going on, sometimes to an insane degree, including this Fear Inoculum song. A lot of great polymeters going on in there. So let's talk about 5/4 by the Gorillaz. I'm actually going to press play on it. And the riff is in 5/4, but there's nothing else going on. So it's just a time signature of 5/4 for the guitar riff. But then when the drums come in, the drums kick in on 4/4. It's the basic money beat. There's no hi-hat at the beginning right when it starts. The hi-hat comes in later, but you can imagine just a basic 4/4 money beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So when the beat kicks into the song, there's no hi-hat. It's just 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 like that. But it's very clearly in 4/4. That's why they call it the money beat. If you want to make money as a drummer, learn the beat. So the money beat kicks in a little bit thereafter, so it's really stark. You can hear the 5/4 riff, and then you can hear the 4/4 beat, and you can hear how they're not linked together. They don't necessarily care about each other. And eventually they do come back in together on the 1, but then they separate again. And that's a polymeter. So check this out. very clearly it's in 5, right? You can hear the riff. So right there is where they linked back up on the 1, because eventually they're going to link back together. But, it took those measures to get there. So that's a really fun example of polymeters. The riff is clearly in 5/4. The beat is clearly the money beat, snare on 2 and 4. It's clearly a 4/4 beat. And they have this really strange, fun, contrasting sound because it really has a cool musical effect. It's more than just, kind of like everybody sticking together on the 1. It has a really, really interesting sound. Keeps things interesting. So I'm actually going to wrap it up there. I think we did a pretty good job covering polymeters. You can go back and watch that polyrhythm video if you haven't already. These two things, are similar enough that it gets confused. They get confused a lot, especially the word poly there in front. People think like, what do these two things have to do with each other? But they have a similarity to each other, like I said before, the way that a car and a garage do. So they are linked in a way, but if you think about it, like, it's actually kind of a silly question. What's the difference between a car and a garage? It's a stupid question. The car is the thing that goes in the garage if you want. A garage is a place where you could put all kinds of stuff. Same thing. Measure is the place where you put the notes. A polymeter is dealing with the measures. Polyrhythms are dealing with the notes. So yes, they have to do with each other, sort of, but it's kind of a silly comparison. One of them's dealing with the car, the other one's dealing with the garage. Totally different. So, any questions, reach out to me, carlsplazadrums@gmail.com. You'll get your 2 free drum lessons. Please join the newsletter. Go to drummerscommunity.com and join the newsletter. Got a lot of great stuff coming down the pipe, so please feel free to stay on top of that. And hopefully you'll follow us on YouTube, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Put some comments in there. Let me know why I'm wrong, even though I'm not. Thanks so much for following along here, and we look forward to hearing from you guys in the future. Take care.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Ask a Teacher. We have some big things coming up soon in the drummers community, and we cannot wait to share those with you. So if you want to stay up to date on everything that's going on with our community, please join our email newsletter. That is the best way to keep up with everything we're doing. You should find the link down below this video to join the newsletter right now. Of course, it's totally free to do so. And if you liked this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell to make sure you never miss any more of these. Thank you so much for being a part of this.